run NSLOOKUP, make sure that you have DNS configured correctly, perfectly, before you even go into running DC promo on the second domain controller. It'll fail almost every time otherwise. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go back into, let's actually explain what we're doing here a little bit more. We're sitting on SRv11 right now. Okay, and remember, SRv11 is a member server. What we're going to do is we're going to run DC promo, and we're going to join or copy the Active Directory database over from SRv1 to SRv11. So now we're going to have two domain controllers functioning for our one domain. Okay, so here, same command as before. DC promo for domain controller promotion. That brings up our Active Directory installation wizard, and I click next here. Now this is different than last time. Remember, last time we chose the top option, domain controller for a new domain. Well, we already have our domain, and we don't want to create another one. We're still going to be functioning within benandbrady.com. So we're choosing to create an additional domain controller for an existing domain. Okay, and read what this says. Proceeding with this option will delete all local accounts in the server. So all those local accounts, the local administrator, any user accounts you may have created in SRv11, okay, will be deleted. So that's something to definitely pay attention to make sure you don't run into any issues. Okay, and for the most part, keep in mind when you set up a domain controller, anytime I'm doing it, I'm taking a standalone server and almost immediately promoting it to a domain controller. So it doesn't sit there for a long time functioning as a standalone or a member server on the network. For the most part, a domain controller is a domain controller almost from the beginning. Okay, let's go ahead and go forward here. Additional domain controller. And notice we didn't have all those other options, the tree, the forest. That's because since we're a additional domain controller for this domain, those options have already been set. There's nothing to even talk about or determine. Okay. Now here we must supply a network account, domain username and password. And that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. This is the domain administrator account and password for the benandbrady.com domain. Okay, so I'm going to click next. Now it wants to know what domain name we're actually going to be joining. Okay, so enter the full DNS name of the existing domain for which this server will become an additional domain controller. You can type it in, you can browse for it. It should indeed appear up here in the browse list. If there are multiple domains on your network, on your physical network, all these domains will show up here. Okay, so you'll be able to select whichever domain you wanted to join to. Okay, so I select OK here. Next. Where on this computer am I going to put my Active Directory database? Same thing applies. If at all possible, I'd like to copy the Active Directory database in one location and the log location on a different physical hard drive for performance reasons. Okay, so this is, we're getting that domain, that Active Directory database over from SRv1. Where do we want to store it on our system? Same thing at the sysfile folder. Okay, if you don't want to put it on C within the WinNT folder, you can choose differently. I recommend that you leave it where it's at. It's always easier to find, troubleshoot, and work with if it's in its default location. Password here, directory services restore mode password again. Once again, okay, you're going to want to type in something that people aren't going to know. A blank password's not a good thing. On the other hand, you don't want to put in something so obscure and then not record this so you can't use it again at a later time. So we'll just use the same thing here, pass. Click on next. And now we can click on next one more time and see if our Active Directory process is going to take place. So notice this looks a little bit different, and typically if you run into a problem, failure occurs right at the beginning of this Active Directory domain process. Okay, and failure rate's pretty high. If you don't have DNS working properly, I can almost guarantee that you're going to fail when it comes to copying over Active Directory. Okay, so in a classroom environment, consistently over and over and over again, you'll see this process here fail. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the tape right now. Should be about 5-10 minutes for this process to occur. This has everything to do with the size of the Active Directory database. In our case, we've hardly added anything at all to the Active Directory database, so it should copy over fairly quickly. If you have a very large Active Directory database, it could take substantial amounts of time. So you need to be prepared for that, and don't rely on this system to be up anytime soon. It's hard to say how long it'll really take. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we'll pick back up after the system has rebooted. Okay, we're back here in Client 1. SRv11 has finished replicating over the Active Directory database, and we're going to connect to it right now and take a look, see what we can tell that is different, and also look at a couple things we did not look at before when we installed Active Directory on Server 1. So we're going to logging on to the domain once again. Okay, so now we're sitting over here on SRV11, and the first thing we want to take a look at is, let's go check and see if the Active Directory database file is there. Okay, so that's located, if you recall, on the C drive within a Win